So today we're going to be talking about divorce, but don't worry, it's not what you think. Welcome to IncreMental Health Tips. My name is Jared, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Liz. Today we're going to be talking about collaborative divorce. And I know that might seem like an unusual topic for us to cover, but we'll explain. So let's just get right into it. Well, first, it's important to know that life is full of unexpected changes, and given the difficult circumstances in the past year and a half with the global pandemic, with the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of relationships have really been strained. Even though we're connected as a society through social media, we're actually really not all that socially connected to one another, and so being forced to be in close quarters can lead to some additional tensions. So obviously divorce is unfortunately an issue for a lot of people. So before we begin, Liz, can you just talk a little bit about what collaborative divorce is as opposed to just traditional divorce that we might think of?
So when most people get divorced, they think about litigation and going to court and having their day in court where they think the judge will give them justice. But really what tends to happen there is that a judge applies the law, and a lot of times people don't like how that works out. They may have also heard of mediation, which is a form of negotiated settlement, but collaborative divorce, it can actually be cheaper than mediation with lawyers. And so it's a process where each spouse has their own collaborative lawyer, and if they bring in a family professional like me, then they have someone to help them with some negotiation skills and to work through all those emotions that they're going through.
Well, and especially if, let's say, there are children involved, that could really be a difficult thing to navigate, because how do you deal with the transition of living all in the same house to being in every other weekend sort of situation?
And I've worked with divorcing clients, and there's a lot of high emotion there. Even if there's no kids involved, there can be a lot of anger and resentment or different fears that they have that can really stop them from being able to come to a resolution.
Well, just going back to something you said about how everyone has this idea that if they go to court, they're going to receive justice. Really, something one of my mentors told me, who does consulting for criminal courts here in Ontario. He told me that the law is usually about 10 years behind of where everybody else is, because Western society is such that laws don't change quickly, and while that has some downsides, it's also kind of a good thing, because it means we're not making bad decisions very quickly. But unfortunately, it also means we're not really making good decisions very quickly either. And if you think about how our culture and perspectives and the way we handle some of these issues like divorce changes over the past decade, it's clear to see why court may not be your best option. As much as we would like to believe the system that we have works, it's imperfect.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons a lot of lawyers are switching to a collaborative divorce approach, because they find litigation high stress. It's a lot of filing of motions. And really what ends up happening is that a lot of what the client wants communicated in court gets lost in the filing of motions.
Well, and as well, it just bogs down the court system. So
yeah. So, and the good thing about collaborative divorce is that it can work even for high conflict couples. And that's a lot of where the role of the family professional comes in, is that they try to calm those emotions and get people more focused on what it is they really want, what's at the root of, you know, why they want the red car, or what's at the root of why they're, you know, pushing to have full decision making rights, or, you know, what's going on with that, and just getting a better understanding of that and giving people more options that they haven't thought of before.
Okay, so a couple things come to mind for that. I think you've touched on how collaborative divorce relates to mental health, but it's important also to know that much like the therapeutic process, both parties actually have to be willing to undergo this process. Whereas if you have one spouse who is quite keen on the idea of the collaborative approach, which involves a lot more discussion and a lot more informal in the sense that it's not in court, negotiations, and if the other does not have that mindset, then the process just will not work.
Yeah, and I mean, there are some collaborative divorce lawyers who will do mediation or litigation because they recognize that to do a collaborative divorce properly, you do need two people who have collaboratively trained lawyers and who are willing to do a collaborative process.
So is the collaborative process common in the United States and Canada?
I think it's more common in Canada. I've heard that in Canada it's been a lot more popular and a lot more developed, and it's something that's been growing, I think, for the last 20 or 30 years. So it started with one lawyer who just had this idea that the typical process is too adversarial, and he wanted something that helps to calm people, and then family professionals were brought in to add a different layer to it and, you know, help enhance that ability for people to resolve conflicts.
Well, going back to that mentor who consults with the courts, he oftentimes works in a criminal setting and acts as a mental health professional, and a lot of times it can really inform the process. So I imagine in the same way, lawyers are not therapists. Lawyers are experts on how to understand the law and make legal arguments. And really that's the extent of it. I mean, maybe there are aspects of being a lawyer that are, you know, that require some sort of skills and application of psychology, but ultimately they are not mental health professionals. And so there's clearly a lot of benefit to having a mental health professional along for the process.
Yeah, and you're going to be paying your divorce lawyer around $500 an hour, whereas family professionals are at a much lower cost. You're going to get, you know, 3 or 4 hours at, you know, the rate you'd be paying at a different rate. So you can do a lot more work in terms of dealing with those emotions. And I heard from lawyers when I did the training about how, you know, they're dealing with all the grief that their clients are dealing with and processing their divorce and working through things. And they're not trained to deal with that. So it makes much more sense to pay someone who's at a lower rate, who actually knows how to work through these issues.
So just you touched on the lower cost aspect. So other than the cost, I mean, I can see the benefit that therapists provide strategies. And so the process of working through your emotions on a divorce, you can actually carry those skills forward and have those skills moving forward. But what are some of the other benefits of this process and approach?
Well, I've worked with some people, and it's years after they had a very contentious divorce, and they're still having to pay lawyers because they haven't figured out how to resolve things, even though they are already divorced. So I think getting those lasting skills on, you know, if you need assertiveness skills or just how to soften what you're asking for to make it more effective, there's a lot that people can learn in therapy.
And for our viewers on YouTube, we've actually had up a chart that kind of illustrates the process. For those of us who are listening via only audio, you can check out our website, IncrementalHealthTips.com. and you can check out that graph that will show you the process. But it's important also to know, because we've picked up on a very specific topic in talking about divorce, but the whole collaborative approach applies beyond divorce or some significant transition. What are some other ways that you see the collaborative process can really benefit people to get a therapist involved, or get an accountant or a financial professional involved?
Well, with the financial professionals, instead of both lawyers collecting all the financials, you're paying the one person to get together the financials, and then the lawyers just double check their work. So instead of having two lawyers at $500 an hour doing the same job, you're having one person at a lower rate putting that together. And then they can explain, the budgeting and other things like that. If there's someone who's a little bit unsure about how they'll manage financially, they can talk them through it.
Okay, but what are some other areas that this process can apply? Like, does taking a collaborative approach to other types of conflicts help? Not in the sense that you would get lawyers involved, but the idea of getting a therapist involved, or...
I mean, I think the skills that I learned from the training, they can be used for any couple who's trying to figure out how to resolve something. So people don't just go to a divorce lawyer when they're getting divorced. They might be going because they don't know how to resolve something with their spouse, and they may still want to stay married, but they just don't know how to get to that resolution. So helping people go deeper into, well, what is it you want and why do you want it? And really getting to the root of that can help people figure out other ways of meeting those needs.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for today, but I do think this is an important aspect to keep in mind, that therapy not only helps you navigate a difficult circumstance in the moment, but also can help you develop a skill set that you can bring forward and bring to other challenges, and really help develop yourself and improve yourself. If you're enjoying our content, please consider sharing, liking, commenting, and subscribing. We upload new podcast episodes every Tuesday at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And just keep in mind, until next time, that small steps can lead to big changes. We'll see you next time.